Hi everybody, Jake here with DmaxStore. Today we're going to be installing an IBOC Stage 2 leveling kit and a set of Icon upper control arms on our 2018 GMC Canyon. It's going to come with your front coilovers that are completely assembled. It's going to have 6061 anodized aluminum top and bottom pieces, as well as the spring adjustment collar. These are heat treated springs, so there's not going to be any sag after you install them. The ride height when you install them is going to be the ride height you get. This is going to be a 2.0 shock for the front and the rear, so you're going to be having a 46mm piston to go with this shock to dampen your suspension. Everything that IBOC makes is actually dyno tested and off-road proven, so they've tested it in the field and on the dyno, so you know you're getting a quality shock. All the IBOC components are 100% made in the USA. They're made in Corona, California, from raw materials all the way to the finished product that you guys can see here. So that's a really big plus for these IBOCs, as well as a lifetime warranty that you get with your shocks. Also does come with this handy adjuster wrench, so you'll be able to adjust your ride height if needed. This is at no charge, comes with this kit. You can upgrade to their awesome billet aluminum version as well for a little bit more. This is going to be your Icon upper control arms, and the reason that we're doing this on the Canyon is because it is really easy to damage those ball joints. When you're lifting up the suspension, you're taking out the droop travel, and the factory ball joints and control arms are just not made for that. They're made for stock height. So if you're ever lifting the front end of your truck, I always recommend a set of upper control arms. And we went with the Icon Vehicle Dynamics tubular upper control arm. That's going to feature their patented delta joint. It's going to have CNC machined housings, a semi-gloss powder coat, and built-in caster correction, so you get the correct alignment settings after you lift your truck. Overall, this is a great way to maintain reliability within your suspension system, so you're not bottoming anything out, causing premature wear and possibly severe damage. So the Icon Vehicle Dynamics upper control arms and the IBOC Stage 2 coilovers and rear shocks. So we're going to go ahead and install this on our 2018 GMC Canyon. This does have the 2.8 liter Duramax, and this is just going to be a quick little leveling kit, wheels and tires, so we can show you guys how this stuff is installed and how it rides after, because the factory ride on this thing kind of sucks. All right, here you just want to measure the front ride height before you actually put it up in the air. Then you can get it securely lifted into the air, and you can remove all the wheels and tires. We're going to start on the front driver's side here. Here you can see all the stock componentry, very basic parts, and a little bit undersized in my opinion. We're always going to use a jack to support the lower control arm, because when you loosen up that upper control arm from the spindle, all the weight is going to be resting on that lower, and it's just going to yank on it. So in order to support all the way to the brakes and the control arms, we're going to go ahead and put a nice jack under there just to make everything is secure. I'm going to go ahead and remove the sway bar and then the splash shield that covers it as well. Once that's out of the way, you can remove the sway bar, and now we're going to go ahead and disconnect all the brake lines and ABS lines from the spindle to make sure when you disconnect the upper ball joint, it's not going to pull anything out of the way. Now you're going to undo the tie rod end, and we'd like to thread on the nut just a couple times, and then you're going to whack the spindle with the hammer so you can break that taper and it actually falls out. Having that tie rod nut in there is going to capture it so it doesn't just fall out of the way. Now I'll go ahead and remove the nut on the ball joint. You have to pry down a little bit just because it is going to be kind of spring loaded per se. So it's going to fly right out of that spindle. So we used a pry bar, so that will go gently. Now you're going to want to remove the lower bolt for the coilover. Now you can remove the 3 nuts off of the top hat on the frame section here. I can remove that whole strut assembly. Now you have access to the upper control arm bolts that are actually holding it in place. So you can go ahead and loosen these up, and then you'll be able to remove the entire upper control arm. Now those bolts are removed, that upper control arm should wiggle right out. All right, so we got the control arms and the struts off of the Canyon. So you can see, I mean, these things are pretty puny. It looks like stamped steel with a really, really small ball joint. If you're looking at these two, you can tell that this ball joint is a whole lot bigger, and that's gonna mean it's a whole lot stronger as well. So it's also way heavier with gussets and DOM steel, so I mean, it's a really strong unit versus this, and it looks a lot better as well. These ball joints from the factory are also not serviceable. So with this Delta joint, comes with the Zerk fitting right on top, so you can always grease it at your normal oil change intervals. Here's your factory strut. Just didn't ride very well. I mean, just plain black spring, plain shock, nothing too fancy here. And then here, I've got the Eibach Pro. This is gonna be a stage 2. This is really nice. It just looks way, way better than the factory ones, and it hopefully will ride better as well. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and install the upper control arm back onto the truck. So you're just gonna have to kind of wedge it into the frame there, throw those bolts through, and you can tighten that up accordingly. Now you really do want to make sure that you grease all the bushings when you're assembling the upper control arm. That way it's not gonna squeak with that polyurethane on the actual arms itself. And you're going to want to tighten these up completely, because once you have that coilover installed, you're not going to be able to access these bolts again. So just to make sure it's nice and easy, snug it up now, get it all the way tight, and torque it down. Now the Eibach coilover actually uses bolts instead of studs on the top hat, so it makes it a little bit easier for install when you're putting this stuff in. So go ahead and connect one of the bolts onto the top through the frame section right there. And then you'll proceed with the other 3, and then you're going to want to tighten those all the way up before you move on to the lower mount. You're going to want to push it down to get into the supported lower control arm, put that bolt through, and then you'll be able to tighten the nut up on the other side to get that fully installed. Now you're going to want to align the spindle to the ball joint here, and then you can go ahead and put the nut for that on. This is going to be a nylock nut, so you're going to have to crank it on there pretty good. You want to make sure you do set the taper so that stud's not spinning. Once you get that on, that stud should not spin at all when you're tightening that bolt. If it is spinning, you know that taper is not correctly set, and you'll need to do it again. Now you can go ahead and reconnect the ABS lines to make sure that they're going to be on the spindle and not get caught up in any rotating components or the tires. Now you can go ahead and reinstall the tie rod. All right, along with this leveling kit, you know we got to upgrade the wheels and tires too. So we're going with a 265/70/17 Toyo RT Trail and a Method 316 standard in matte black. It's going to be a 17-inch wheel. This is a really good setup. It's going to be a little bit more aggressive of look than the factory ones. It's going to stick out just a touch more, but it's really going to have a lot better traction. This is one of the new hybrid tires, so it's in between a mud and an all-terrain, so you have a good on-road characteristics and really good off-road traction. Now this is different than your standard RT, and it actually is a more aggressive and a lot better wet and snow and ice traction. So this is a wonderful tire. We did get it siped because we're heading over the Sierra Nevadas all the time in that inclement weather. So this is going to be a great setup for this Canyon with the Eibach and Icon leveling kit. Now you can go ahead and proceed to reinstall the factory sway bar. And you can go ahead and put the end link back onto the sway bar as well. You go ahead and put that splash shield back over that sway bar using those 4 bolts. And now onto the rear shocks. So we're going to make sure that the axle is supported. Remove the lower nut and bolt. So this rear shock is going to be a little bit funky as the def tank is right above the spare tire. So you can go ahead and loosen up that first bolt, but you're not going to have enough room to actually fully remove it. So you're going to have to loosen up the 3 bolts on the def tank, and we use a pry bar just to pry it down just enough to kind of get that bolt out so you don't have to actually fully remove that spare tire. All right, now you can go ahead and put the other one in. You're still going to have to pry that def tank down to get that bolt back in with the Eibach rear shocks. Once that's in, go ahead and tighten it up. And now you're going to just go ahead and lower the axle slightly with that jack so the eyelet lines right up for easy install. Go ahead and tighten the lower bolt as well. Reattach all the bolts for the def tank. And now you have your rear shock on. Passenger side is a lot easier. Just go ahead and take out the lower and upper bolts. There's nothing in the way here. You have tons of clearance. Makes it much easier than the driver's side. Drop that stock one out. Throw the new Eibach 2.0 shock right in there. Now I'm just going to compress the shock slightly so it lines up with the hole here. These aren't super stiff shocks, so not a huge deal to do this. Tighten up that lower mount, and you're good to go. Now it's time to put these new Toyos and Method wheels onto the truck. We always like to start all lug nuts by hand, just to make sure that nothing gets cross-threaded and no studs get damaged. Once this thing is lowered back on the ground, we're going to take final measurements, just see where the ride height's at. Then we always torque our lug nuts down once she's all the way on the ground. So as you guys saw, we installed the Eibach coilovers and rear shocks along with the Icon upper control arms. And that's really get it about 1.5 inches taller than factory, so we could clear a little bit larger tire. You got your 265/70/17. This is a Toyo RT Trail. It's a little bit more aggressive than your standard all-terrain, but a little bit less aggressive than your mud terrain. It's really good on-road characteristics and really good traction in the wet and cold climates. So I'm really happy with this tire. It's not too loud and it looks really good as well. And overall, I mean, the factory truck, this has about 35,000 miles on it when we threw the suspension on, and it just didn't ride good. It felt like it was all over the place, did not feel in control. Now with the iBox suspension on it, it feels way better. It's a lot stiffer spring rate, so you have a little bit more control, less body roll, and you obviously get the additional lift height out of it as well. So we ended up putting a 1-inch rear block in the back just to match the back to the front, so there's no rake. It's completely level stance. And then we went with the Icon upper control arms. That's just gonna give it a little bit more travel going down, so you're not gonna be ripping the ball joint out of the factory UCAs. So the Icon UCA with their delta joint is the way to go. They got greasable bushings and greasable ball joints. So all that stuff is serviceable, so just grease it every oil change and you'll be good to go. If you guys are looking to modify your Colorado, go ahead and head to DmaxStore.com and we've got all the parts for you there.